it was this one morning we were like, okay, this is not going to work. So we either need to decide that we want this to work and we need to talk about what the fuck is happening, or we just like call it a wash and like continue to like go on our merry ways. Hey babes, welcome to Codependency Alchemy, the podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa, and today I'm going to be doing a long-awaited podcast episode on something I promised you a long time ago. And to be quite honest, I forgot because I'm human. And thankfully, one of you amazing humans out there sent me a message saying, hey, where can I find this episode? And I was like, shit, I totally forgot to do that. So this episode is going to be about the tool that Justin and I used to help rebuild the trust in our relationship when we got back together. Because if you listen to, I don't know what episode it was, the breakup episode or the situationship episode, I'm not sure, probably not the situationship episode. But when Justin and I got back together, that was a fucking messy mess. It was really, really dark. It was a dark time. And I don't think that we would have come out on the other side had we not rebuilt our trust in this way. And I want to share that tool with you guys because I know there are a lot of us out there who are literally trying to make things work with either people that we've been in relationships before and there were ruptures, or maybe there was an actual betrayal. And, you know, every situation is so unique, so you'll have to discern for yourself. However, this was something that was extremely supportive for Justin and I. And I actually just recorded another episode where I shared about how this tool actually came up in a current conflict that we had and how it's supporting us even today. So that tool is the safe word tool. And I've shared this with I don't know how many clients, but everyone who has taken this tool and implemented it in their relationship has seen so much growth in their trust and their intimacy with their partner. And I don't mean just like, I don't mean sexual intimacy. I mean like intimacy, like depth and like connection, right? And conversation. That's kind of what I mean by intimacy. I know I use that word a lot and that's come up for people. It's like, what do you mean when you say intimacy? It means connection. Yeah, that can be physical intimacy, but a lot of times when we're learning new ways of relating, that's emotional intimacy, right? And the way that we connect with each other through these conversations that we have. So, to give you an idea of the type of situation Justin and I were in when we implemented this tool of the safe word, we had just gotten back together, and this was after 7 months of being apart. So, in that 7 months of being apart, with like pretty much no contact at all, we did not break up. If you haven't listened to those episodes, definitely listen to them. But if this is your first episode, and you haven't listened to the breakup episode, etc., we had no intention of getting back together. There wasn't like a you work on you and I'm going to work on me and then we'll see if this works out. It was just like, hey, I want this thing, you want that thing. So we love each other unconditionally. Let's walk away because what we want is different. And, you know, even though we had the same friend group, we kind of just didn't really play in the same circles. I was in this situationship that basically absorbed me and I went into this deep dark abyss. And Justin was very much like the opposite of that and was like very out there and going out with friends and being out in public. And I was like in a dark hole, basically like shriveling up is what it felt like. I'm being so dramatic. That's not really what it was like, but more or less. And so in that 7 months apart, like I said, Justin was very out there and going out a lot, drinking and partying and hanging out with friends. And so he had relations with people. Okay. hopefully I don't need to paint it anymore. Hopefully you get what I'm saying. He was out there. He was being fun. He was being flirty. Where I was immersed in a situationship with someone who was also a part of our friend group. So it was a little personal in that way, and a little close to home probably as well. And so when we got back together, there was like all of these fears coming up for both of us that were just basically playing off of each other. And so when I say it was really, really dark when Justin and I got back together, I mean the shadowiest of shadows. We were throwing our wounded selves onto each other, like to the most extreme. And what I mean by that is like, he would say something like, this girl texts me, or and then I would say something like, oh, so and so would never have said that to me. And we were basically just like literally creating the most insecure relationship with one another by pulling at each other's insecurities, right? And throwing shade like at each other, basically. Like I knew exactly what I could say to make him feel some type of way, and he knew exactly what to say to make me feel some type of way. And for whatever reason, when we first got back together, it was like 2 weeks of doing that. And we learned that we usually were intoxicated when we were doing that. So that wasn't helpful. And we learned that there were certain environments that triggered those types of behaviors in us. And it took like 2 weeks of us literally like being so black and white, so like on one side and then on another, where it was like so in love and so happy and so excited and wanting to be together, and then the other side just being like so mean to each other that it was like unbearable, where we're like, why the fuck would we do this again? Like this obviously didn't work last time, so it's not going to work again. And then, like I said, a couple weeks of that, we finally, after having a really extreme blowout with each other, the next morning we sat down together and we're like, yeah, this is not, this won't work. Like, this won't work at all. And like, we have so much love for each other as friends, first and foremost, that I think we both had this realization that, like, we never want the other person to feel as badly as what we're doing to that person. But because I saw him going out and living like his best life and hooking up with girls, and he saw me basically like really emotionally invested in someone who he also knows, we both just felt really insecure in our relationship, and we didn't know how to soften. And so we kept in this like really intense conflict as a way to protect ourselves. It's like, if I can just keep you at arm's distance and like constantly be in this like fight with you, then maybe I won't be so vulnerable and get hurt. It was like literally being at war with someone, and we were at war with someone who we ultimately like we love with our whole heart. And so it was this one morning we were like, okay, this is not going to work. So we either need to decide that we want this to work and we need to talk about what the fuck is happening, or we just like call it a wash and like continue to like go on our merry ways. And we both really did want to try again, because we realized how much fun we do have together and how much love we do have for each other. If we could just get through some of our bullshit that was coming up, and that required us talking about what the bullshit was. And both of us didn't really know what it was. Like, we didn't know that our wounded selves were being triggered. We didn't know that we were like, our fear of abandonment or our fear of betrayal were being triggered when we were doing those things. It took that like conscious conversation um, at a neutral time to be like, what's really going on here? And so it was really pattern tracking together. So I had to ask myself and him ask himself, when are we triggered? Like, when are these fights happening? When are we being nasty to each other? And the pattern was like very much like two main things. He was mostly triggered when we were out with friends. I was mostly triggered when he was on his phone. And so we were like, okay, those are two examples of when we find ourselves most activated and then like lashing out at each other. So, what can we do together as a partner when we are at places with our friends? And we decided that we were going to do check ins. So we had a safe word, and that safe word was chicken for check in. And so whenever we were out with friends, we would set a timer on our phone and we would do a chicken or a check in every, like, I can't remember the time. It was like 30 minutes or an hour or something like that. And so we would set our timers, and then when they went off, we would check in with each other and see, like, how are you doing? How are you doing? I'm doing good. Like, this is how much, like, drinking often was involved, like I said, at the time. And so it was like, how much have you drank? Do you feel like you're doing good? Like, we were trying not to like drink to, an extreme during this time, because that was causing a lot of the problems. And so we were just like, we can go out, but like, we're not going to drink a whole bunch. Like, maybe we're going to have a drink or two drinks. And so we were checking in with each other and in that way, like, how are you feeling? Are you feeling safe? Are you feeling good? And sometimes he was like, I am actually kind of feeling some type of way. And so so we had decided at a neutral time, right, when we're having that conversation that morning, when either one of us was feeling some type of way during the check-in or chicken, we would be close to each other. So like, he would either put his hand on my back, or I would hold his hand, or we would like sit close together for a period of time to like really show that we were there for one another. And then we would go back to, conversing with our friends, et cetera, et cetera. So doing that was so supportive for building trust, because it showed, hey, I'm committed to checking in with you, and when you're feeling some type of way, like, I'm going to be here and show up for you and hold your hand, like having some sort of like physical touch to help show you that I'm here and I'm here with you. And then with the other one where I was mostly triggered was when we were like at home hanging out and he was on his phone. Because like, apps these days, you guys, like, because he was basically saying that like people were texting him and Snapchatting him and all these things. So like, I was just like, this is not safe. So whenever I felt some type of way, I would just say chicken when I was feeling some type of way, so he knew that I was triggered or activated. That's what the safe word is for. It's so that your partner knows that, hey, you're feeling some type of way right now, and I'm letting you in on that. And what is the thing that we decided we're going to do when that person uses that word? So I would say like chicken when he was on his phone, and then he would basically like show me or like hand me his phone and be like, you're welcome to look at anything you want. And at first, that was really supportive for me, because it helped me see like at any moment I could say it and he would hand me his phone. And okay, I already can like hear some some like people out there thinking like, oh, well, he can delete everything all of the time, so there would be nothing to actually ever see on his phone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And my answer to that is, you're right. It's true. He absolutely could have been deleting everything. That is the fucking trickiest part of trust, you guys, is that we can't possibly fucking know. We can't. Trust is this invisible thing. It's something we give without knowing for sure. And that's why I feel like the safe word is a helper in building trust. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know if it's true or not that there's not messages, but there's a felt sense that I have, and there is a continuation of him showing up for me in a certain way that at some point I either lean into trust, or I hold on to betrayal and I keep treating him as the betrayer. So ultimately, I have to decide, am I willing to extend my trust out to him because of all these things that he is doing to help show me that he is trustworthy? Or do I want to keep him at arm's length? And I am, anxiously attached, as you guys know, and also experience fearful avoidant. I don't know what I would fall. I'm like both. I feel like I'm both. And I think that that's really common for people who have fearful avoidant or anxious attachment. Like, I feel like we're both. Um, Meaning, like, when I say fearful avoidant, meaning like I want love so fucking badly, but I'm also fucking terrified of it because the people who I love the most have been the ones that have hurt me the most. So when it comes in, my tendency is to push it away, like far, as a way to protect myself. So I want to name that because it is so challenging to allow yourself to trust someone and allow yourself to receive love from someone when what has been learned is that it is not safe to love, that the ones that you love the most are also the ones that are going to hurt you. Um, so I get that, and I just want to speak to that because that's very real, and I experienced that a lot in this period of time and still experience it, honestly. From time to time, it's just less intense the more safe I feel with myself. But ultimately, that is the tool that we use to support us in that time period. And honestly, we didn't do the safe word thing for very long, like maybe a couple months where we were continuously kind of using chicken to communicate to each other when the other person was feeling dysregulated or triggered or some type of way. And like ultimately at one point, like I didn't need to look at his phone. I was just kind of like, it was just something that naturally fell after feeling more trust, right? Feeling more trust, feeling more secure, feeling more safe. It wasn't something that we needed to do as much. And we don't even use that safe word anymore. But I do feel like having that, if you are trying to make something work in your relationship, it's a tool that both partners can use because you're communicating, right? You're letting the other person know when you're activated or triggered, which can also build a lot of intimacy because that partner then gets to express some form of empathy. If the partner is not expressing empathy and meeting you in that and making you feel bad for having those feelings, well, that's a different conversation. It's a different conversation because your vulnerability should never be weaponized. So if it continuously is weaponized, and what I mean by weaponized is like you share that you are experiencing something vulnerable, and then that person either bestows guilt or shame onto you for having that, that's like taking something sacred like your vulnerability and using it against you. And there are a lot of partners out there that have those patterns. That's something I think I even did as a partner when I was really grasping on to ways to control my relationship. So, I we can't make other people aware, right? Like we can't control other people and what they do. We can bring awareness to it by having conversations like this at neutral times with consent. But if you have a partner who is adamant about not listening to what your experience is and is not willing to have any sort of conversation around bringing awareness around these types of patterns and dynamics, then you have to ask yourself what you value in a relationship and how you desire to feel in a relationship and if this person is really aligned. Because I think a lot of times we stay in relationships or partnerships with people when they are unwilling to hear us, and we do it in the name of love. But sometimes the most loving thing that we can do is walk away from. I knew it was going to happen. I knew Frank was going to knock everything over at some point. Do you see this? It is just, he's something else. Yes, I'm talking about you. Sometimes the most loving thing that we can do is walk away from relationships that are not aligned with what we value and how we desire to feel. And sometimes I think that we fall under this category of enabling our partners by staying because I mean ultimately why would they change? You're still here whether or not they weaponize your vulnerability or use it against you or make you feel guilty or shameful. And it's not to say, actually, it's not to say that Justin doesn't do that to me sometimes, but it's important to note that like, it's not something that happens all of the time. Sometimes it happens, and those sometimes that it happens, it's usually when he's dysregulated. So it's not to say that your partner is going to be perfect and that never happens, but it's just to note, is this a pattern your partner does where they're unwilling to have a conversation at a neutral time about? Because when Justin does it, or even when I do it to him, we still will have a conversation about it at a neutral time, which shows that we are willing to be transparent. We are willing to evolve and grow together, that we're not perfect and we're not trying to pretend to be, but that we are willing to have those conversations and stay open and curious. And like what I value in a relationship is transparency, openness, honesty. And so it's how we handle those types of situations where there's conflict or there's, you know, a experience or a situation where someone is treated unfairly or poorly. Those might happen, but it's what you do when they happen. It's how both the partners respond when those things happen. If afterwards there's these opportunities for repairs and these conversations to grow from, then that's important in a relationship. If the situation or experience where you're being poorly treated or treated unfairly happens and then there's no repairs on top of that, and then it just piles and piles and piles, and there's no willingness to have a conversation about it, there's no willingness to talk about ways to solutions, right? Solutions together, then that's information too that I think we really need to start asking ourselves is, hey, are we having the conversations that matter the most, which is the repairs and the conversations of solutions with our partners? And that's how we're going to get out of the dysfunctional ways of relating and the codependency, is by not enabling behaviors, by avoiding them because we're afraid that conflict equals abandonment, that conflict equals betrayal, and seeing conflict as points of connection. So if you've been in a relationship where you're trying to make things work, or there's a lack of trust and you're needing to rebuild trust, or there's something broke trust and you're wanting to rebuild trust, then this would be a really, really amazing conversation to have with your partner around what you desire, and that you desire to build trust and feel safe in your relationship, and that you want to try using this safe word to build that trust. First, it's going to be really important to identify when you're activated or triggered. And it'll be interesting because 9 times out of 10, it's like, oh yeah, every time this happens, I get triggered, or anytime this is said, I get triggered. And so then you get to share with your partner, hey, these are the places where I get activated and triggered, and these are the stories I tell myself, and I would love to think of solutions of ways that I can feel safe and secure in our relationship when these types of things happen. And then also turning it to your partner and seeing if there's also something for them as well there. Are there times in your relationship where they get triggered or activated? And how can you support them when those things happen? Like Justin and I, we both had different situations where we would get upset. And so learning what his were and why his were there like helped me cultivate empathy for him, because it's like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense why you would feel that way in that situation. And then vice versa, he gets to see me and like where I'm activated and triggered, and then cultivate empathy for me in that situation and see like, oh yeah, I could see how you would feel that way in that situation. And that is ultimately just like, I think the biggest trust builder is that we're staying curious with each other instead of saying like, Why would you get upset when we're with our friends? Why does it matter? Like, I'm not going to do anything. Like, you can trust me. Like, that's how we've been relating. And that's not fucking working. Like, that's just making the person feel bad, right? It's weaponizing their vulnerability. It's saying like, you're a bad person. Not really, but like, you shouldn't be feeling the way that you're feeling. And instead we're saying, I hear that you're feeling the way that you're feeling, and what can I do or what can we do to help you feel the way you desire to feel? Those are the conversations we should be having. Instead of taking it personally, instead of needing to defend yourself, those are your feelings. I see you. They're valid. What can we do together as a team to help you feel how you desire to feel? To help you feel safe, to help you feel secure, to help you feel confident. What can we do? What can I do to support you in that? Those are the conversations that we should be having. So finally, I did the episode. Thank you guys for being patient. I hope this safe word episode was helpful. If you use this tool, please let me know. How did it go? What did you think? What do you still have questions around? If you need help navigating the conversation with your partner and like the specifics of your situation, if you want help in uncovering maybe what the patterns are so that you can pattern track and come up with solutions, definitely join the Codependency Alchemy membership on Substack. It's $9 a month or $90 for the year. You can ask it in the AMA chats. You can ask it in the monthly meetups. I do hot seat coaching or answer your questions in a private chat all day, once a month. And yeah, it's just a great way to get additional support and feedback on these types of conversations and topics. If you haven't already signed up for the 3-day Codependency Alchemy immersion, it's at the end of June. It gives you a taste of what the membership is like. So if you're like, I'm not sure if I want the membership or if I need the membership, you can basically try it out and see how you feel and decide, oh my gosh, yeah, that was super valuable. I do want to join the membership at $9 a month, or just join the immersion. I've done this type of immersion in the past and it's so powerful, even if you just do the free immersion, because ultimately it's just helpful and very special and healing to know that we're not alone in our experiences and that other people have the same patterns, tendencies, experiences as you do. And you'll get at the very least that from the immersion. Again, that's at the end of June. You can sign up for free by using the link in the description box below or in the show notes. And yeah, let me know if you're watching on Spotify, if this podcast episode was helpful. And if it was helpful, it helps so much to leave a rating or review. If it's not too much to ask, leave an honest rating, leave an honest review. It helps this podcast reach other people who don't follow me on social media. If you don't follow me on social media, definitely check out the Codependency Alchemy Instagram broadcast. It's free, and sometimes I'm doing AMA chats in there as well. And that's been really fun to connect with you guys in that way. So that's what I have for you. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you next week. Bye.